Hello folks, Dr. M here. Trying to cover the scientific method portion of our first lab. When you come into lab this week, you'll be doing the hands-on portion, which is the great acorn hunt. But for the other part of the discussion of scientific method, I did want to have you all in the classroom talking to each other. So this is going to be a poor substitute for what I normally do, because it would work a lot better if you were all in the room. So there's an explanation of the scientific method in your lab manual. I wanted to do something a little bit different when we talk about science. And the way I wanted to start with is this ordinary suction cup here as we know it. But don't think of it as a suction cup for a minute. I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it on the board. And as you can see, it hasn't fallen down. Okay, what I want you to do is take a moment and come up with some possible explanations for why it hasn't fallen. What is it about that is holding it up there? Come up with several alternative explanations. If you want to pause this for a second, you can go ahead and do so. But think about that for a second and come up with some ideas. Okay, I know you didn't pause and come up with some ideas, but let's go through a few. Hopefully you've got a couple ideas kicking around in your head. Now most of you probably, are going to think, hey, it's a suction cup, it's being held up there with suction. Okay? Good guess. But what are some other possibilities? Okay, Timmy? Yeah, that's right. It could be held up there by magnets. By the way, Timmy, keep Lassie there from scratching so much. She's kind of shedding all over the place back there. Okay, what would be some other ideas for how it might be held up there? Sally? Yeah, it could be glue. I'll get a little bit fancy here, use a fancier technical term. We'll just say adhesives. Cover things that aren't technically glue. Okay, so we've got a number of possibilities. Yeah, Tom, Velcro. Could be Velcro. You see what we're getting at here? These are all possibilities. Now, you know some of these aren't true right off the bat, but we're coming up with alternative explanations for what is holding it up there. Any other possibilities? Margaret? Yeah, okay, that would be a possibility too, I suppose. It could be gravity. Linda. Yeah, that's an interesting one. It could be magic. There's two types of magic if you want to think about it. There's the old school sleight of hand type magic where you make some appear out of the ear or something like that, which we call an illusion, or it could be magic as in the Harry Potter vein. And we'll come back to that in a minute too. Any other ideas for what could be holding it up there? There are a number of possibilities. Maybe yours didn't get up on the list. But what I want to do is, for a second, I want to come up with a different name for these guesses as to what's holding it up there. Anybody want to tell me what a good guess would be? Janet? Hypothesis. And since there's plural, we'll say hypotheses. These are hypotheses for what is holding this piece of rubber up there. Okay? We already have some elements of the scientific method there already, right? We have an observation that's holding up there. We have various hypotheses now. What's the next step that we're going to do? Going back to grade school science, you know that the next thing we have to do is experiment. Now, these experiments could take several forms. They could be literal experiments where we get out some apparatus and do some testing, or they could just be refined observations. So there's a couple of them. So consider this list and let's think of some possibilities for how we could test or what observations we could make to eliminate some of these hypotheses. We're not going to be able to prove one necessarily, but how would we go about eliminating any of that? Okay, Jim, that's a good idea. We can make some observations to see, for instance, if there's any Velcro there. So if I bring this around and hold it up and let you all look at it, okay, do you see any Velcro there? I mean, you'd have to have Velcro. It'd have to be Velcro up on the wall. We don't have any Velcro in either place. Okay? Tom, you want to check that out? Yeah, there's no Velcro on it. And for that matter, is there any glue on it? Okay? Tim? Stick to your fingers or anything? No, there's no glue on it at all. Anybody propose another possible test to eliminate the possibility of glue? Ishmael. Yeah, that's a good one. If it has glue on it, it should stick to something like paper. So I have a piece of paper here. Doesn't seem to be sticking. Let's try a different way. So by observation and by experiment, we've shown that two of these, Velcro and glue or adhesives, those don't work. Now, the way science works is when we eliminate a hypothesis, it's gone. It's buried. Now, you could resurrect it sometime, but for our purposes, we're saying these are no longer in play, which makes these other hypotheses stronger. Of course, there's always a possibility that something that's not on our list could be the actual explanation. But in science, at least, we don't consider that. We come up with a list of hypotheses. We test them. If they survive the test, we keep them on. If they don't, we take them off. Okay, so let's take a look at these other ones. Okay, take a look at those possibilities. Again, let's hold off on suction for a minute. I think you guys know where this is going. But look at some of the other possibilities. We've got gravity up there. Now, if gravity was holding it to the board, okay, put it on, if gravity's holding it to the board, then it ought to hold other things to the board, right? Put a piece of paper up there, that doesn't stay up there. You know, could it be that specific spot? Well, it won't hold a piece of chalk, won't hold a piece of paper, which is pretty light, won't hold a little pin wipe. So I'm doubting, kind of doubting its gravity. By the way, all these things prove too that there wasn't glue up on the wall, right? So I'm not thinking gravity is at play. If anything, gravity is pulling it down, which goes with our experience. So you know, if it's some kind of weird anti-gravity or something like that, it's, you know, however it's working is beyond our explanation. What about magnets? You know, if you want to stick something up on the wall, magnet is a pretty traditional thing to use. So if it is magnetic, what would you hypothesize that this is working? Lou? Yeah, you would hypothesize, or you could experiment that if we had a magnet, and I've lost my magnet, if we had a magnet here, there it is, it would stick to this. So I have a magnet, it's just not sticking to it, okay? Now, some of you are probably thinking, wait a second, how do we know that that is a magnet? Well, it has a piece of metal stuck to it, and, okay, that's holding on to it. That's sticking it there pretty good. If I get just a random piece of metal, like a stapler here, and holds on to that, the stapler's metal, so that's a good thing. Kind of the acid test for magnets is what do they do with a compass? So here's a compass, and you notice that needle goes crazy when I move the magnet around it. So pretty good, we have pretty good tests. We've done some sub-experiments here to make sure we have a magnet. Now, years ago, when I did this for the first time, I said, and of course the other thing we want to know is, does the magnet stick to the board? And I just tossed the magnet up there expecting it to fall, but it turns out that the board has a metal backing and the magnet sticks to it pretty well. Okay. On the other hand, a random piece of metal, okay, doesn't stick there. So we can pretty much rule out magnets. Okay. There's also in the room over here, there are also other metal objects. You know, if this was magnetic, then the washer should stick to it. And there's other things in the room that I could put on that are metal, that iron type metal, and it just doesn't stick to those either. So we can cross magnetism off, okay, unless there's somebody, you know, playing with electromagnets that we can't see. That would get into the realm of magic. So let's think about magic for a minute. If we're thinking kind of traditional magic, you're thinking, well, maybe there's some strings or something, and traditionally the magician would go around and, you know, with his hand or whatever to make sure, show you there's no strings there. You could think maybe there's a little hinged door and somebody reaches from the other side. I mean, there's all kinds of things. If somebody's a really good magician, we might not be able to detect it, which is kind of interesting. And then there's the other type of magic, the Harry Potter type. What if Harry Potter is sitting in the back of the room under his invisibility cloak, which, you gotta think about it, by the time those kids all grew up, all three of them fit under that one cloak. In any event, could be sitting back there doing a nonverbal incantation there that causes this to stick whenever I put it up there. Leviatum or something like that. Yeah, that's a possibility. And in fact, it's a possibility that we have to take seriously enough to admit that we can't eliminate it. As a hypothesis, we cannot eliminate magic. Okay, just can't do it. Magic is part of what we call, put it right here, the supernatural. It goes beyond the natural. And when we talk about science, science can only provide explanations for the natural. Okay, we can't get into the supernatural world. For that matter, God could be playing with us, right? God could be, you know, whenever I put this up there, he could just be playing a joke on me and sticking this up there, just like he stuck all the fossils in the ground or whatever, or she stuck all the fossils in the ground. For that matter, I have a theory. Hear me out on this. I say that the world was created 5 minutes ago by a 53-year-old Jewish grandmother from Hoboken, New Jersey. And you're saying, wait a second, that can't be true, right? Yeah, Timmy's saying, I mean, even Lassie doesn't buy that one. It's, you know, how could that be? Because you've all been sitting here watching the video for longer than that time. Oh wait, I forgot, we're in lab. You're all sitting here in lab, and you've been watching it for more than 5 minutes. It seems a lot longer than that, actually. But no, she created you with all your memories. Okay? You can't refute this hypothesis. Whatever argument come up with, I'll just say, well, that's the way she made it 6 minutes ago. Okay? You can't refute that. That is also a supernatural explanation, and we simply can't account for supernatural explanations. So magic has to stay on there, or any supernatural explanation has to stay on our list, which is kind of unfortunate. This is what science deals with. That's why when people say that something proves the existence of God or disproves the existence of God, it's really tough to say that, because, you know, God could conceivably get around anything that we try to put on him or her or it. I'm waiting. We haven't seen the list of pronouns for God yet. I'm waiting for it. Maybe that was on the tablets on the Ten Commandments. We're going to have to double check that to see, because, I mean, we always say God is a he, which is really kind of assuming, I guess, on our part. Well, anyway, we've got to figure out what is holding this up. So we've got suction is left. Do we accept suction just by process of elimination? Well, in some cases we almost have to do that, but we really should test it. So think about some ways that we should test it. If it was suction, we would expect it to hold to any firm, solid object, smooth object. Okay, so the board obviously counts. What about the desktop here? It doesn't hold real well. If you were in the room, you could see that this desktop is kind of scarred up, and that may be part of it. But it does hold a bit. Okay? I'm going to turn the camera here so we could see a couple other things. Okay? Would you assume that it would stick to the window? In fact, it does. That's what this thing was designed for. It will stick right here to this panel here. In fact, I pulled the panel off once by mistake. But here's an interesting one. What about the brick wall? Stick or not stick? It sticks for just a second, and it's a little bit rough. And even more telling, it won't stick at all when I put it on over those cracks on the wall. So the argument is very good for suction being part of it. And in fact, if you think about it, we know that it is suction that is holding it up there. The more technical explanation, I'm going to lower my voice a little bit so the physicists don't hear me, because I'm going to maul this explanation a little bit. When I push down, I push the air out. The suction cup wants to expand. Okay, it's shaped in such a way it wants to expand, but it's got 14.7 pounds per square inch of pressure pushing on it that prevents it from expanding and letting air in underneath. As a result, there is friction formed against the board, and that offsets the pull of gravity. Another test that we could do, it shouldn't hold on to a screen, for instance, and if we poked a hole in it, it shouldn't hold. But I'm not going to do that because this is a nice suction cup. I used to do this with a plunger, but sanitation and stuff like that, that's not a good idea. So I've been using this for a while, and that's worked out pretty well. So our best natural explanation is suction. So we've done observation, hypothesis, experiments, and we have generated a new hypothesis that if we tested it further and we were really confident about it, we might even call it someday a theory. We could also call either the hypothesis or the theory, we could call them a model of how the system works. That's becoming increasingly common in science. We tend to use the word hypothesis when we're talking about testing something. We tend to use the word model when we're talking about our current best explanation, which may be a hypothesis or it may be a so-called theory. And of course, these things can spin back because these experiments can lead to new observations. And those can lead to new hypotheses. And this can spin off and you can have new theories. But that's the way that science works. Okay? And that's what we're going to be trying to show you this semester are some of the different ways. Lassie, no, don't do that. She's humping the leg of that chair. It's really kind of weird. Okay, so anyway, that's what we're trying to teach you this semester. We're talking about science in general. We're going to be making observations this semester. We're going to be conducting experiments. We're going to be drawing conclusions from those experiments, testing the hypotheses. I don't know if we're going to come up with 8 theories or laws, right? But we'll see what happens over the course of the semester. So looking forward to see you in lab on this week in lab. Make sure that you have your mask with you. We have some really nice face shields for you right here in the lab that we'll have you put on. We'll spread you out a little bit in lab after a little bit of introduction, but again, because we're going to be working at close quarters, we want to keep the in-lab time to a minimum, which is why you're watching this video now before you come to lab. Okay, so see you this week. Take care.
Science. She blinded me with science. 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 She blinded me with science.